Hey there, this is author illustrator Jarrett Lerner, the creator of A Work in Progress. This video is made to go along with the Global Read Aloud schedule of the reading of this book, but you can watch it whether or not you're doing the Global Read Aloud. But this video will cover the fourth week of reading on the schedule, which is pages 174 through 225. And this video, along with the others, are not made to give you a summary about what happens in the book, the plot, but to offer some insight and information that hopefully makes your reading of the book more enjoyable and more meaningful and more rich. Insights and information specifically, I'll be giving you about the creation of the book. So, this portion of the book marks another turning point when Will first meets Marcus, who is this new kid in his school, a kid he doesn't know. Marcus finds Will hiding out in the back of the auditorium. He's come back there to hide out as well because he wants to skateboard. Marcus does, and he's getting in trouble for skateboarding in the front of the school. When he should be in the cafeteria. By the way, some of Marcus's story is also my story because my friends and I were often scouting around for places to skateboard during our free periods and lunch periods on school property because we were so desperate to be on our skateboards all the time. So that's a bit about a bit of Marcus that comes from me. Marcus becomes the most important, second to Will, becomes the most important character and figure in this book and in Will's life. And the most important thing, I guess, to point out about Marcus is that unlike the other kids in this book, the rest of Will's peers who we've seen him interact with and heard about him interacting with, Marcus is genuinely interested in Will, curious about him, and he keeps coming back. Will is actually positive. He convinces himself that there's no way that Marcus is going to come back behind the auditorium to that patch of concrete, even if he's desperate to skateboard. There's no way he's going to come back a second day if he knows Will is hanging out there, because Will is so uncomfortable to be around and, disturbing to look at. This is what Will is thinking. But Marcus comes back. He keeps coming back. And not only that, he asks questions of Will about himself. He wants to know more. He shows Will that he thinks he is worthy of learning about, of being around, of getting close to. And that is powerful and profound. Showing someone that sort of attention and interest and care. And it's unusual and uncomfortable for Will, and he doesn't react to it the best always, as you'll see. But it's important. And what Marcus does is, by looking at Will differently than everyone else is looking at him, he offers Will an opportunity, a chance, sort of a foothold to turn around and look at himself differently. And it's not easy to do, and it takes him a while. And this will become a theme in the rest of the book, the second half of the book. I don't think that's spoiling anything for you. But Marcus at first sort of sort of almost by accident, and then sort of more actively, is trying to get Will and compelling Will and encouraging him to see himself differently. And often, I think especially when we're kids, it's other people who help us really form our identity and cement our identity. And what Marcus is doing is offering Will a more positive story of himself. All the stories pretty much Will has heard from now, except notably from his parents which when you're a teenager isn't always, the most reputable and trusted source of information. But all the stories from people besides his parents have been negative, and Marcus is offering him a positive one. Something else I want to draw your attention to is that I've talked in the previous videos in this series about how Will's drawing has sort of disappeared. This thing, this outlet, this positive, beautiful, wonderful thing that he relies on and uses has disappeared. But importantly, when Marcus steps into his life and keeps on coming back and returning, Will is compelled to try and make sense of him and what he's doing and explore what he's doing and who he is by drawing. Drawing begins to creep back in his life. He wants to draw Marcus. He wants to draw how he's skateboarding. And that's significant. That being around Marcus brings drawing back into his life. Even though it's just for a little bit, as we see, it disappears again. A couple other things I want to share and I want to point out is the first is about skateboarding. I am a skateboarder. If you are on social media and go and find out, you can find some videos of me and pictures of me building ramps and skateboarding. Skateboarding is something that I found as fell in love with and discovered as a kid, sort of right around when Will does. I might have been a little bit younger, but it really took over my life. And even though I can't do it as much as I used to do it, I used to do it pretty much all day, every day. And even though my body it's taking a toll on my body and I can't do the sorts of things I used to do on my skateboard, I still do it as much as possible. And for me, skateboarding is important to me and I love it and I continue to try to practice it because skateboarding is the one time, it's the one activity I have where my mind and my body, and in a previous video I talked about disordered eating being a discrepancy between a lack of accurate and faithful communication between your mind and your body telling your mind what it needs and your mind giving it or not getting in the way or getting in the way of giving it. But for me, skateboarding is when my body and mind are most cooperative and respectful of each other. If you're on top of your skateboard and you're hurtling forward on a ramp or at a rail or at a stair set that you're going to jump down, or just bombing a hill, you're flying down a hill. If your mind and body are at odds, you're going to fall. You're going to hurt yourself. It's not going to be fun. In order to successfully skateboard, especially in order to pull off difficult, challenging, risky maneuvers successfully, in a way that you're not going to break your foot, which I've done, or injure yourself in any countless other ways, your mind and body have to cooperate. They have to work together. They have to collaborate, and they have to respect each other. The mind has to be sort of in awe of what the body can do and let the body do what it does best. And the body will also rely on the mind to keep it focused and calm and centered, and to set off all the signals to help the body do what it needs to do. And when I'm on my skateboard, I feel most appreciative and respectful and caring and loving about my body and the way that it communicates and interacts with my mind. And so skateboarding was not in this book just because I think kids like skateboarding. I mean, some do. When I was a kid, it wasn't the most popular thing in the world. It's gotten much popular. But skateboarding is in here because I love it and because it's meaningful to me and because it is an activity like that in which I really think the mind and body have got to be linked in a positive and mutually appreciative relationship in order to do the things it needs to do. One of my daughters is very into gymnastics right now. Same thing. If she's distracted, if her mind and body aren't working together and respecting each other, she's not going to be able to pull off what she needs to do. And so that's why skateboarding is sort of in here on many levels and why it becomes as you'll see, it will become figuratively important for Will and his story. The other thing I want to point out is something you'll surely notice, or you have noticed, is that when Marcus really pushes Will to find out more about him, and Will sort of protectively throws it back on him and asks him to share about himself, Marcus does. And he does here. And I wanted Marcus's story to appear like this, as this giant, overwhelming block of text, more words on this spread. We call 2 pages next to each other a spread in a book. I wanted there to be more words here than you would see anywhere else, and in a way that is totally overwhelming, especially when you go back to some of these bearer pages. I wanted you to see how open, how much Marcus is willing to share about himself, how comfortable and confident he is putting himself out there, and overwhelming not only Will, but you, and even the book. He's straining at the outlines of the book. I asked my art director to go as high and as far as we could without potentially causing some printing errors on these pages, to sort of overwhelm you visually with words. I'm using words, but it's also a visual use of the words, as free verse poetry does always, but to overwhelm you with the amount and the depth and intensity and breadth of what Marcus is willing to put out there into the world. How open and vulnerable he's willing to be, to sort of hopefully get Will to be open and vulnerable right back. For me, the first step towards healing and getting over all of this stuff that I went through, like Will, it was opening up. I waited to open up until I was an adult. I did not tell anyone that I was dealing with this and had been dealing with it until I was an adult, until I was a grown-up. The first person I really opened up to about this stuff was my wife, and I had been married to her for years before I opened up to her about it. And it was really in opening up, in finding someone I felt I could be vulnerable with, and I had plenty of people before then as well, but in trusting someone and trusting myself to be open and vulnerable and honest with someone, that was the biggest leap I made towards getting better and healthier and finding sort of a purer happiness. I spent years, even decades, letting the sorts of things that Will goes through sort of dominate my life and sort of even taint a lot of my experiences and memories. So it was interfering with my life, even when it was a sort of background noise. And it wasn't until I allowed myself to open up, sort of like Marcus does, and to do the work to feel about myself how Marcus has come to feel about himself, and hopefully will eventually. It wasn't until that things started to really improve for me. So I wanted to show an example of that. And Marcus and the way he lives and acts and talks is an example of that. Will, obviously, if you've read this section, he can't do it. He cannot open up to Marcus, at least right away. But he opens up to himself. He sort of explores his story himself, privately, in his drawings. And it's sort of delves back into the darkness, and he sort of is so he reacts so strongly to that, and to Marcus trying to get him to feel differently and better sort of about himself, that he sort of teeters and tips into the darkest place of all, and sort of begins to careen towards rock bottom. But that is it for this section of the reading. So Thank you for watching this video. If you're reading this book on your own as a read aloud or with the Global Read Aloud, however you are, thank you for checking it out. And I hope this video, along with the others, has provided some interesting insight and information about the creation of the book and made your reading experience and your discussion and exploration of the book more rich and rewarding and meaningful and enjoyable. Thank you so much.